Hello and welcome into another fantasy hockey video. Today I have some discussion topics, mostly from the comments, but I do have one topic that I came up with on my own to talk about at the end of the video. That being said, thank you for subscribing if you have lately. I still have to update that total in the screenshot down below. It's at like 515 or something right now, so I haven't updated that in a minute, but it will be updated. If you haven't subscribed, please consider it. I really appreciate that. I make a lot of fantasy hockey vids. Feel free to check them out. You can check out my videos on my channel. Let's get into it, though. Don't want to waste too much time on the intro. Joe Thornton. Eric Ohlendorf. Do you think Joe Thornton's play is sustainable? Coming off injury, I'm a little weary, but being on Matthews and Marner's line, I feel like he's going to go off. Now, the key thing is being on Matthews and Marner's line. As long as he's there, yes, he can produce at this level of probably not a point per game, but a little less than that, to the point where he's chipping in on some goals. You know, he's just going to benefit because of the talent around him. That being said, though, they're not playing the Ottawa Senators every night, even though it seemed that way last week. February 18th, 17th, and 15th, Joe Thornton racks up 5 points in 3 games against the Senators, playing with Matthews and Marner. And if you look at Matthews' production so far, he has 14 goals against Edmonton, Vancouver, and Ottawa, and only 2 against Winnipeg, Montreal, and Calgary. That being said, he's played a lot more games against the bad teams so far. But all these guys' production is a little over their heads right now, in my opinion. Like, Matthews is not going to be a goal per game player. That's just not a thing in the current day NHL. No, don't get mad at me, Leafs fans. I know you come out of the woodwork, but that just isn't going to happen. He isn't going to score 56 and 56. He is playing in the division. If anyone's going to do it, it's that Canadian division, because a lot of goals are let up. Two of the worst 2 teams in goals against per game are Vancouver and Ottawa, I believe, and then Edmonton's like 6th or 7th right now. So it's a very goal-scoring, happy-go-lucky division up there where the numbers look ridiculous. But the score lines are pretty high for a lot of games compared to the other divisions. And that being said, does Joe Thornton stick on that line? I have a tough time seeing him consistently, just because of his age, being able to stick up there with the minutes that Matthews and Marner should put up. And then you got Joe Thornton, who plays 12, 13, 14 minutes a game. And then you got Matthews and Marner, who should both be playing around 21, 22. I don't think Joe Thornton's going to be able to keep up, to the point where I think he's going to be shifted down in the lineup eventually. But ride Joe Thornton while he's hot and while he's playing with Matthews and Marner. But I have a tough time seeing him sticking there consistently throughout the whole year. We then move on to Cam Atkinson. New Phi Sig asks, is Atkinson back to his 2018-2019 self? And I'd say this might be the best version of Cam Atkinson you're going to see. He had about, let's do some math here, 9 points in 5 games in the last 5 games, all against Nashville, Carolina, twice against Chicago, and Carolina again. But this first line of Columbus is something that might be going under the radar for a lot of people, because they know what Patrick Laine is. Patrick Laine is an elite scorer. There's a reason you got him in the Pierre-Luc Dubois trade, because it's an elite talent for an elite talent. Patrick Laine more of the scoring type of talent. Pierre-Luc Dubois more of the complete player talent. But then you put him with the center Mrazlovic, who does have pretty good potential in my opinion, and you put him with Atkinson, who is on his year a 30-goal scorer, 30-assist guy, like 60-some points, and you put them all together, and it looks like it's something that's working out very well for Columbus so far, and it's something I'd want to have stock in. Sadly, I don't think I do in any leagues, actually. I don't think I was able to pick up Laine, even though I wanted him in one league, and I don't think I have Atkinson in anything, and I was going to pick up Mrazlovic. It just didn't work out. But I think Atkinson, you look at him, he's got 14 points in 18 games. I think that pace is sustainable. What he's done in the last 5 games is ridiculous. That's probably not going to keep up. If it does, he might win the Hart, which, I think he got Player of the Month or something too. But 14 and 18, I think you could see him chugging along at that pace for the whole year, assuming this line sticks together, which I see no reason it shouldn't. We then move on to, that being said, though, I do think he's back to his peak form, if that's what you were asking. I do think he is. This is an interesting one. Would you rather stash Seguin or Vladimir Tarasenko on long-term IR? In a year like this with coronavirus, a lot of injuries and a lot of day-to-day stuff, or at least with my rosters I've had this, I have a tough time stashing anyone who has a pretty uncertain future. That being said, though, if I have to pick one this year, I think I'm going Tarasenko at the moment, for the pure fact that he is skating right now, and Seguin wants to, he's being optimistic he can play before the Cup Finals. Or not the Cup Finals, the Stanley Cup playoffs in general. What's he going to be for the limited time he plays, Seguin, if he gets back right before? is it going to be too late to the point you're already eliminated by the time he gets back? Whereas Tarasenko sounds like he might just come back a bit sooner to the point. I think Tarasenko is the guy to stash. And it's not like Sagan's like a Connor McDavid talent compared to Tarasenko. Like, yes, he's put up better point totals comparatively speaking at his peak, or I believe in the peak, but they're not that different. They're pretty similar point totals if you look at their peak seasons. But Sagan a little bit beyond Tarasenko, I believe, peak-wise, if you look at it, but not by much. To the point where it's got to be Tarasenko just because he's coming back sooner, you'd expect. But you were lucky if you were able to afford one of these guys, because with all the injuries and everything and all the COVID, I haven't been able to have a free IR spot in a while to stash someone who might not play to April. So you're lucky if you have this problem, because I couldn't afford this right now in my leagues. We then go on to a trade. TJ Callis, which I read that as DJ Khaled for some reason every time. Man, I'm pissed. Yesterday, I traded Tavo and Pettersson for Wheeler and Malkin. Do you think this trade will still be fine, or is it lopsided? Well, this is a very intriguing trade, because I could see this one going either way. Now, I should switch the sides here. I don't know why I did that. I'm going to switch that just for my own mental sanity here. Yeah, I believe that's how it should go. So would you rather have the right side or the left side? You can leave a comment down below. Personally, I think I'd rather have the left side at the moment. I think Teuvo Teravainen's picked up pace at the moment to the point where him and Wheeler are pretty similar. And then you got to ask me, would I rather have Pettersson or Malkin? And I think I'd rather have Elias Pettersson right now over Evgeny Malkin, just because Malkin hasn't shown me much this year so far, and Elias Pettersson had that terrible start, but he's been very solid as of late. But I'm kind of torn on this one, which is why I brought it into the discussion, for the pure fact I want to know your opinion on this trade, because I'm leaning on the left side, but I feel like that could be an unpopular opinion because of the consistency you get out of Wheeler, and if Malkin does recapture form, it's probably the right side, but I'm not sure I believe in Malkin right now to recapture form, and I think Pettersson might outpace him this year, whereas I feel like the bottom's a wash between Teuvo and Blake. But I'm kind of curious what your opinion is. I think I lean left side, but very unconfident, so that's why I brought it up. Then we go on to this one, and this is another one that's interesting from Michael DeCunto. What's up, Pat? Just got offered Pastrnak and Dylan Strome for Hall and Theodore. What are your thoughts? Now, I took Dylan Strome out of this because I think he's a replacement level player in fantasy. I think he's a point every other game type of guy. Those guys are typically available on waiver wires. I don't think he's going to be scoring much to the point I should even factor him. So really, you got a point per game defenseman in Shea Theodore, which are hard to come by. And you got TheodoreHall, who has 10 points in 14 games, only 1 goal. And I just feel like if I'm giving up David Pastrnak, I want a point per game forward, and I want a defenseman who is like Shea Theodore. I think Shea Theodore's stats are a little bit better than he is. I don't expect Shea Theodore to get 56 points in 56 games. I expect him to come in more around the 40 to 45 based on how he's playing. And then if Taylor Hall is not scoring goals and he's got let's say 40 assists and 10 goals at the end, I'm looking at David Pastrnak, who's around a goal per game right now, a little under. He's like Matthews. No one's going to be a goal per game, but Matthews and Pastrnak are two of the best goal scorers in the league. Pastrnak plays with Marchand and Bergeron to the point where he can single-handedly win you matchups, and I don't think Theodore or Taylor Hall are those guys. And I feel like if you give up a guy like David Pastrnak, a Leon Draisaitl, a Connor McDavid, and Austin Matthews, you have to be getting back a king's ransom, and I think this just falls a bit shy for me on what I would want back. Those are my thoughts. I'm curious on anyone else. I know some people believe in two above average players like Hall and Theodore are worth an elite player. I think Pasternak's just a tier beyond that, but I'm curious. We then go to Point in Panarin. Who is better right now for fantasy, Point or Panarin? From Nate Crane. Thanks for the question, Nate. And I gotta lean Artemi Panarin. Artemi Panarin is a more dynamic player than Brayden Point. He's just a better scorer than Brayden Point in general when you look at creating for his teammates and all that. And Point is playing with Stamkos and is playing with a better team around him, but Panarin is just one of those guys. I think Panarin has a good argument at being a top 5, top 10 player in the league just based off skill, what's around him, what he does with it. He's just fantastic to watch, and point total wise, he's got 18 and 14, slightly better pace than Point, who's at 16 and 14. The gap's not that big if we're being honest here, but if I'm going to put my money on one guy to finish better for fantasy, it's 110% Artemi Panarin for the remainder of the season. I don't think that's a bold take, but I think it's one that's fun to talk about because I am a big Braden Point fan. I have been for the last 2-3 years. I've owned him in fantasy a lot of the past years. I think this is the first year I don't have him in most of my leagues just because his draft stock just skyrocketed after his playoffs. But Braden Point is like in that top 20 conversation, maybe top 10 conversation, but Panarin's in that top 5 conversation at the end of the year, in my opinion. Might not be there, but he's in the combo to get there. We then go on to the last question, which is from Ryan Brown. Ryan Brown usually puts a good amount of questions in. I just only picked one this week compared to some weeks where I try to answer all of them. Bryce Talks left good comments under your video too, so I felt like it wasn't really necessary to dive into all of them because, you know, the discussion was down there. And it's about Evgeny Kuznetsov and is he falling off? And I don't think necessarily his play is falling off. I think it's a little bit of a slow start, along with the fact you got to consider he isn't on the Washington Capitals' first power play. Last year he only had 12 power play points. This year I believe he has 2 so far, if I'm not mistaken. So he's just not going to really get to that elite scoring level that some people think he's capable of. If Nicholas Backstrom didn't exist and he was centering that first power play unit, he'd probably be around a point per game in general, but he just isn't, so he's a little under a point per game. I think he will pick up the pace a little bit compared to his slow start, but, you know, he's just a solid player. He's nothing special in the terms of fantasy, but it's all about opportunity. So if he can get on that first power play unit, which it just doesn't look like it, he will take a step forward. But I don't think it's really falling off. I think it's more about the situation he's in. But he does play with Ovechkin and Oshie, so I do expect his numbers to increase for point-per-game purposes. We then move on to the last topic, which I decided this is kind of small font, and I know that might annoy some of you if you can't read it. But I just want to compare the points per game to the point leaders right now. Just to point out that if you look at the point leaders right now, I believe 6 of the top 10 are all in the Canadian division. And the big thing you guys got to consider when looking at ranks, you know, how players are doing in fantasy, you got to be careful because it's usually about total. So a lot of the Canadian players right now are above all the American players if they played like the Canadian teams have played like, let's see, like 19-18, whereas a lot of American teams have played like 13-14. A lot of American teams have already had, you know, games postponed. I not every team, but most of them have, or at least have had their schedules affected to the point where you're going to be looking at a lot of these teams leading your leagues right now with a lot of Canadian players, and then you're going to see as the league goes on and the season goes on, you're going to see a lot of these American teams make up games, and you're going to have an advantage having American players, or not American players, but players on American teams, because you're going to have a heavier workload in the back half when it matters more in fantasy. So I could see the benefit of maybe, let's say you got like God, I don't want to say any of these names, but let's say you got a Brock Besser who's got about a point per game, and then you got, let's say, like someone like Brad Marchand who's a little above a point per game. You might be able to fool someone, probably not with Brad Marchand, but like, for example, like a point per game player on a Canadian team is worth a little bit less than a point per game player on an American team right now, for the pure fact that the American team is going to have more games to be played in the future, if you get what I'm saying. But don't go too wild with this. Obviously, you want to make sure you're getting value for talent if you trade a Canadian player. But it is something to think about if you want to big brain your league, basically. It's something that you might do if you're in an ultra competitive league, because you could probably make a good move there for a like, but with a guy who has more games in the future. Like, for instance, like Dallas or something, who missed a ton of games at the beginning of the season. They have a ton of games to make up. Maybe you like a Rupe Hintz over, like, I don't know, like a depth center on maybe like a Kotkaniemi. I'm just throwing names out here, but I hope you get what I'm saying here. That was just a thought I had. You can look at the points per game compared to the points leaders. When I look at who's having the best season, I genuinely look at points per game over point leaders, because I just think it's a better indicator. This is on a 7 games minimum too, so on the right you're not in this if you played less than 7 games, so do take note of that. But that's all I have for you guys today. I hope you enjoyed the video. I stretched 8 topics out to almost 15 minutes, so I do understand if you clicked off the video by now, but if you're still here, thank you. Leave a comment. I love the comments. I love the interaction. And subscribe if you like the videos, and I'll see you in the next one. I'm gonna plan on putting the next video up on Monday. I am in school, though. I am pretty busy, so if it does fall back to Tuesday, it is what it is. I try to get them up as soon as I can, but, you know, life gets in the way sometimes. So I'll see you in the next video. Peace out, and enjoy the hockey as always.